All right, so let me talk to you a little bit more about tackle. So if you're a beginner, the thing you need to know is that there is a system that we use that weighs fly lines. It's now called the AFTER system. It's called the AFTM system, and I'll put a link, I'll put it at the table on the page. And basically what they do is they weigh the first 30 feet of fly line, excluding the level tip on the front of the fly line, and according to its weight they give it a number. I've got one here. This is a SA bonefish fly line, one I use a lot, and it's an 8 weight. And so that weighs 210 grains at 30 feet. Now you might go, what are grains? Well, it's actually grains of barley. So if you were to cut the first 30 feet of fly line up and cut off the level tip, and you were to put it on some balances, and you would put 210 grains of barley on the other side, it would be dead equal. Typically 3-4 weight is considered light. Something like 6, 7, 8 is middle, moving up there. 9, 10, 11, 12, they're heavier weights. And your choice of line is largely determined by the size of the fly you are fishing. So if you were fishing a fly, so many to choose from, that looks like this, okay, which is a popper, you would need quite a heavy line to turn that over, at least an 8 weight. But if you were fishing, on the other hand, something that looks like this, which is it's a kind of a medium-sized dry fly, then you want a lighter fly line. So for trout fishing, where you're normally using quite small flies, they can be as small as 18 or 20 or even 30, very, very small flies, you want to fish lighter lines, and like 3-4 weights. Whereas if you're fishing something like a weighted woolly bugger, which is the name of a fly, then you want something like an 8 weight. And if you're fishing the salt, where you're fishing big weighted crab flies, you probably need a 10 or even more. Now there are some other considerations involved in this. The lighter the fly line, the more delicate it is. The heavier the fly line, the easier it is to cast into the wind. The heavier the fly line, the stiffer the rod, so it can be easier to fight bigger fish. But generally speaking, it's the size of the fly, range that you intend to fish with, and then you match that to the fly line. So previously I suggested something like, I think it was 5, 6, 7, 8, or 5, 6, 7, or 6, 7, 8. In that region is a good there's a good outfit to learn with. However, if you are just fishing small streams and you've only got one rod and it's a 3 weight, then that's the one you want to train with. And if you are just fishing the salt and you're only using a 10 weight, then that's what you want to train with. And it is quite possible, you know, if you're just beginning, you've probably only got one rod, and it's going to take you a couple of years until you get 20 or 30 or 40 rods like everybody else. So that's fine, just practice with what you've got. For those of you who are coming through this and you've got a range of rods, then you've got a bit of a choice, and that's when I would suggest something in that middle, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good range to practice. And the reason for that is if you go very light, you're very much affected by the wind. It can still be good training. And if you go very heavy, if you can do a lot of casting an hour, you're going to tire yourself out if you do an hour of casting with a 12 weight. So you know, those with a 12 weight, usually you might wait 1 shot an hour or 2 shots. You still need to train with it, which brings up a very important point. So while the bulk of your training should be with those middle line weights, before you go away, if let's say you're going to go to the Keys and you're going to go and fish for tarpon, I would suggest somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks out that you get that tarpon gear out, you get the tarpon leader, and you get the fly, and you cut the bend off, you get the hook away at the bend, and you train with that. That's what I do with all of all the anglers who I coach. So bulk of the work, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then train specifically with what you're using. And if you are just a small stream angler, then train with that gear. That's what you want to be doing. Second consideration is fly line, and this is now quite a contentious subject because So this is quite a contentious subject, because fly lines have really changed since when I started, and I'm going to show my age now, because when I started, most people, or certainly I, was using a double taper fly line, which is a very long, which is like a 90-foot line, which is all pretty much level apart from the two ends. And that was pretty much standard. And it was either that or a relatively short weight forward line. Now, to begin with, just train with what you've got, it's fine. But if you're going through this series and you're really trying to master your fly casting, then there's little better than a double taper fly line, particularly if you need the versatility of making mends at distance and making curve casts at distance, which is a really great fishing skill to have. Somewhere in my favorite fly line, hands up, is the Mastery Expert Distance. The competition line, 120 foot long, and the head depends on the line weight. If it's a 5 weight, the head is 68 feet, and it's also the same taper as the SA Trout, a very similar taper. Bruce Richards line, the old XXD. I love that line because it behaves like a double taper until I've got the head out for it, so I can make casts at 60 feet, 70 feet, and it's not suddenly disappearing on me. And then when I do need the distance, it's certainly a very long casting fly line. But that's me. But when I go trout fishing, if I was trout fishing in somewhere like the States or in Europe, my go-to line is a DT4, a double taper 4. That's all I need. And I use that here in the jungle for marcia on the rivers. New Zealand, on the other hand, for me, that's 6 weight territory. And I would suggest, if you are choosing a fly line, actually, if you're going to spend money, spend the money on the fly line. I know that I manufacture rods and I should be telling you to buy expensive rods, but actually that's not the truth. What you actually want to do, if you're going to spend money at all, buy a decent fly line. It's also very important you have a tapered leader. It solves a lot of problems, or not having one creates a lot of problems. So a good tapered leader, something like the Rio Trout, they have a really nice one down to about 8 pounds or 10 pounds. Can't remember if that's Nordex or 1X, and then add some tippet to that. So leader length should be ideally 1 to 1.5, maybe twice the rod length, depending on what you're doing fishing wise. I would rarely fish a leader of less than 1.5 times the rod length. Anything less than a rod length is really very short and very difficult to dissipate the energy of the unrolling loop, so you can get a nice turnover. So if it's too short, it kicks, and if you don't taper, it kicks. I'll put some more information in on the page there. Anyway, most important thing is, if you've only got one rod, that's what you're going to train with. If you have a range of rods, park yourself in the middle, and then 4 to 6 weeks out from going off to a destination and where you're going to fish big heavy flies, you want to practice that before you get there. You don't want your first cast with a weighted crab in 6 months to be a shot at a permit. Hope that helps. Sorry, I'm fishing at the moment. I just can't stop myself. And the fish I'm looking for isn't here. Isn't that a bummer? Should be. I had an appointment with him. It's 5:30. Where is he? It's late. He decided to go to a different restaurant. Kind of sucks. He was here yesterday. Should be here today. The same weather. What's happening? Bloody fish. Really unpredictable.